Now to Mexico, and the killing of the Mexican cartel boss known as El Mencho has unleashed a power struggle in the criminal underworld there. Among the rival groups hoping to gain influence is the Jalisco New Generation cartel, one of Mexico's most violent and notorious organizations. The group is behind the trafficking of cocaine, amphetamines, and fentanyl to the United States and is feared for its ruthlessness.
He was the most wanted man in Mexico. Nemesio Oseguera, or El Mencho, was one of the founding members of the Jalisco New Generation cartel when it formed in 2009. Since then, it has grown into one of the most violent drug cartels in Mexico. Now, with the death of El Mencho, what happens to the cartel hinges on how quickly a successor can be named. El Mencho's biological son is serving a life sentence in the US, and the lack of a structured family hierarchy could lead to an internal power struggle. Several likely successors could take the helm, including El Mencho's stepson, known by the nickname El Tres, his son-in-law El Chorro, and the influential characters El Sapo and El Jardinero. If there is a leadership vacuum, it could trigger turf wars with rival cartels. Historically, Mexico's most volatile regions are those where rival factions compete for dominance. The Jalisco New Generation has a significant presence all over Mexico, from its base in Jalisco State on the Pacific coast across to the Mexican Gulf Coast, as well as areas bordering the US in the north. One of its main rivals is the Sinaloa cartel. It operates in the north and the south of Mexico and overlaps with Jalisco New Generation in many areas. But Sinaloa is plagued with its own internal power struggles. Its former leader, Joaquin Guzman, aka El Chapo, was arrested and captured a decade ago and jailed. Since then, competing factions have been fighting for influence. The Mexican government has sent thousands of troops to address cartel violence in Sinaloa state, adding to the pressure. Still, Sinaloa remains one of the most powerful drug cartels in Mexico. Several other smaller cartels also have a significant presence in territories overlapping with those of the Jalisco New Generation, including the Northeast Cartel, the Michoacan family, and the Gulf Cartel. One long-term outcome could be the fragmentation of El Mencho's cartel into smaller groups. In the past, regional commanders have created new gangs, sometimes partnering with rival cartels. If that happens, it could spell the end of the Jalisco New Generation.
Well, for more on this, we can now talk with Vanda Felbab-Brown here. She's director of the Initiative on Non-State Armed Actors at Brookings, a think tank based in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us. First of all, Vanda, I'd like to get your take on the way El Mencho was taken out. What was the strategy behind that?
Thank you for having me. So, as is often the case, it was human error, in this case attachments, that led Mexican intelligence forces and security forces with U.S. intelligence to nab him. That said, El Mencho is someone who was on the run for over a decade. He was one of the most wanted men in Mexico, high up at the top of U.S. hierarchy, certainly after the Sinaloa bosses were arrested or killed. And so it was really remarkable that he managed to evade law enforcement for such a long time.
Since El Mencho's death, Mexico has seen a massive surge in violence. To what extent are local communities affected when the government intervenes like this in the balance of power among cartels?
Unfortunately, the steady outcome of so-called high-value targeting, namely arrests of top criminal bosses or their lieutenants, has been big escalations of violence. Most of the times, this takes place at the smaller scale, not across Mexico, which is something that we have been seeing since Sunday, although particularly areas of most intense Jalisco presence, so Jalisco, Michoacan, the central part of Mexico, so most violence. But violence was really taking place from the border of U.S.-Mexico to the south. Now, this violence, however, is different. This is not yet violence over succession, over who will be the new leader. This is not violence between two or several criminal groups. This was essentially demonstrative violence, the cartel's retaliation against the states. You killed our leader, we will show you up, we will make life miserable for the state, for communities. And it involved the deaths of some 27 members of the Mexican security forces, destruction of banks, attacks on critical infrastructure. It was really stunning to see the ostentatiousness and brazenness with which Cartel de Jalisco New Generation retaliated against the raid and death of El Mencho.
Take a broader view on this for us. What does it tell us about Mexican state institutions when cartels and criminal groups are able to grow so powerful in the first place?
Unfortunately, Mexico has seen a steady deterioration of security for many years, acutely so during the previous administration of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, where the criminal groups were really taking over not just a wide variety of illegal economies, but wide variety of legal economies, from legal agriculture, fisheries, logging, extractive industries, to all kinds of retail of alcohol, cigarettes, groceries, stores, as well as having tremendous influence over elections and institutions. Now, the Sheinbaum administration that came into power in October 2024 has tried to reverse this. And the challenge for the Mexican government is both the need to reverse the power of the criminal groups, but to do so in a way that also mitigates violence. And a lot of the strategies, such as high-value targeting, has neither accomplished weakening the criminal groups, nor has accomplished the crucial objective of bringing violence down. President Sheinbaum has set violence reduction as one of the objectives. The Mexican government has been touting that they made some progress. I'm skeptical about the extent of the progress, but now the arrest of El Mencho may just throw all of that overboard once again, and for very likely we will see intense violence for months to come.
Vanda, thank you very much for talking with us today. That was Vanda Felbab-Brown, Director of the Initiative on Non-State Armed Actors at Brookings.